So next on the agenda is we have these two beams colliding with each other, but we want more of a splash in the center of the beams, something that sort of comes out omnidirectional, lands, hits the ground, and then dissipates. And to do that, we're going to need to go back to where the center of these beams are. So if we go to scene view, we can see if we go to these beams, turn it off manual, don't need to see all objects. So we can see the points here, and then if we make this beam, we need this center point here, because that's the same point that is holding the collision object. So we need to go to the center point that we had set up before. Had it mixed up. So I thought we were looking at the downward one, we were looking at the upward one. So center point of the upward beam. And so now we are going to use that point, and we're going to do copy to points. And we want that single point in the target points, and then we're just going to create a sphere. View that. The sphere is much too large, and I think it would be good to view what's actually going on with our characters just so we have a better point of reference. So yeah, that's way too large, and instead of it being a primitive, we're going to need to manipulate this geometry. So I'm going to put it to polygon and up the frequency by a decent amount. So let's just make it 25 or something. Looks good. And so then, yeah, we're going to make this smaller. Something closer to this, I'd say. And then we're going to add some more noise. So let's go into here, do what we've been doing, do an add. And this is why I don't really like working in VOPs, but it's got to be done. All this clicking and dragging, it's really easy to miss what you're trying to actually manipulate. So I'm going to make this simplex noise. And so that's not going to work, but that's fine. We're just going to promote all these. So let's increase the frequency. Interesting. Yeah, the noise I'm getting is kind of strange looking. Let's see if we can do something about it. So yeah, amplitude was certainly too high for this scale. And yeah, we'll increase that frequency, get a little bit more surface noise. And the reason we want this to be noised is because what we are going to next do is give it some normals. And we want the normals to be abnormal, I guess. So if we facet it, do pre-compute normal, and view this, everything's pointing outward, but not everything is pointing outward in a uniform direction as a sphere would have. And this will allow us to create a velocity field that will push particles out in unique ways over time. And so to make sure that it's over time, we are going to offset this by time. So let's just click and drag and see how this goes. I'm going to get that flag off the top so it doesn't take too long to load all the geo in as we try to scrub this. So just watch this. Yeah, something like that looks good. One thing I think I've noticed is that it's sort of hanging a little bit when I do stuff, and that is because if I go to render view, if it is set to auto update, then every time you try to scrub, it's going to try to render. We don't want that, so let's turn that off. And now this will scrub much faster. Once I get it back into not manual mode, there we go. And scrub to my heart's content. Cool. Okay, so now that we have normals, what we want to do is pretty much what we've been doing. So I'm going to create a point wrangle, and we need to build velocity. And to do that, we already have our normals, but we want to give random length to these normals. So I'll do fit01, rand, pt_num, channel float min, channel float max. I do this. I'm doing this for the sake of you guys, just to kind of beat it in, but it is good to just create a preset. If you're doing something all the time in Vex, you can do that very simply. I'll show you in one sec. So if we do mult v equals n, okay, and if we go up here into this gear, we can do save preset, and then do n to v. Save preset. So now, since we do this function all the time, I can just delete this now. Point wrangle. Go up here, n to v, and there you go. And I can create this. Minimum, let's say, is 0.5. Max is 1.5. So there will be a large difference between the shortest and longest normals. This defaulted to 0, so let's do 3 just to see what that's going to look like. So we can see that we now have a varied length of normals, and if we look at velocity, we've got our velocity. So now what we need to do is create a popnet. So one thing that I'm going to need to do is create another flip simulation. We've already done that, so I don't really feel like I need to build it again. So I'm just going to go into this popnet, go into manual, and I'm going to steal some of the stuff that I've already done. So I'm going to copy, coming into here, just going to get rid of all that. I'm going to paste this. Need an output. So flip object, we can see that it's bringing in from the first input up here, source, first context geometry, points. We do have points on that sphere. But I think instead we need to actually scatter onto the surface. And then I just remembered that since we're scattering onto the surface, we don't want the points to be emitting from the entire sphere all the time. We want it to be shifting and undulating along with the sphere. So to do that, we are actually going to give it some color as well. So if we look at the sphere, what we can do is we're just going to create another turbulent noise. We're going to plug that into color. We're going to increase the frequency to something we can see. I think we need more resolution on this, so I'm just going to make this like 70. Yeah, that's pretty good. So another thing I want is I want there to be some highs and some lows. Right now it's very I guess you could say smooth. You can see a gradient between the white and the black, and I want it to be harsher because I want it to only really scatter on the white. So we can do a fit range, and then in my source min I can increase that, and so then now you can see that it gets rid of all the lows, it only leaves me with the highs. So I can take it even further if I want. So we'll probably have to alter this as we go. So I'm just going to promote these attributes and then this source minimum as well. So now we will want to offset this noise pattern. So again, we'll do times time, and if we scrub this, the pattern is moving. Great. So now if we go to, also this sim doesn't start until I think 44 or 45, so I'm just to be safe I'll put it at 1044. And now if we scatter onto the surface, we can use our emission attribute. That's right, it's CD. We're not actually in the range, so it didn't find it. But if we do this now, if I delete this, strange. Okay, well, I know that it's CD. It knows it's CD. I don't know why it's not showing up in that drop down, but it will work. So now if I play this, the only other thing it's going to be doing that's strange is it's looking at beam hero tracker for the box center. It just creates a large bounding box that we have for these beams. I don't think I need to change the tracking, the tracking object of this to get the centroid of this bounding box, so I'm just going to leave it as is. I think it'll work fine. And then for lifespan, that looks good. So we'll just see what happens. So I'm going to flipbook this. So after flipbooking it, I was getting some errors and I realized what was happening. And I don't quite know how I did this, but if you go to geometry source in the pop source, where it says scatter onto surfaces, there's also geometry source, and for this it has use parameter values. We actually want it to be first context geometry. And now if we run this, it should actually do something. So now I'm going to go back to our action cam. And now I'm going to flipbook it. So with the flipbook, there's a few things I can tell off the bat. One is that it's too hectic, so I don't think I need the pop force. It's not colliding with the ground, which it will need to. There's too much of it, and it probably needs to live longer. So if I close this out, let's do a few of those things right off the bat. So pop force, that can go away. Let's say that it lives for a minimum of 0.2, maximum 0.5. Let's see, so then we also need to go to this noise pattern, and we're going to increase the minimum value by a significant margin. Something like that. So we just need strands of things. We don't need a whole lot of reaction happening here. So let's make it 3.5, see how that works, and maybe even more. Let's do 3.75. 4. We'll try that out. Then we're going to need to get that collision object of the ground, which already exists. So we'll just steal this and the merge. Move this down. Now we got our static object. gonna look through the action cam. And now I'm gonna try the flipbook again. And just a brief flipbook again. I've noticed another thing that we're gonna want is gravity. None of this is actually falling to the ground. So I'm gonna add that. Plug that in, and away we go again. So now if we look at the flipbook that I just ran, it's it's doing kind of what I want it to do, but since I don't have enough velocity shooting out, it's just sort of sputtering, sort of like a hydrant, and we want this to really fire out. And then there's also still way too much. So in order to fix that, we're gonna have to do a couple things outside. We're gonna have to go here, and where the mult is, let's jack this up to like 10. Let's see what happens. Then we're gonna have to go back to this, and still too much. So let's increase the frequency, but then increase this. So there'll be tiny bits coming out here and there. So we just get little strands. We don't want a fire hydrant. Just little things spurting off in all directions. And then another thing we need to do here before things get out of hand is this is showing us the collision object. So an object merge, we just need to do flip object. I don't remember if there's a 1 at the end. Oh. Nope. Sorry. Flip sol. Oh no. Flip object. Anything that says flip. Nope. Interesting. I think I have a viewport error. Let's find out. Maybe it was an error. So flip object 1. Let's try this now. Okay. All right. So now that I've done that, I'm gonna just run a flipbook again. Do it object level or SOP level. So I ran another flipbook, and so it's semi-successful, but so still way too much, and multiplying by 10, also way too much. So we need to change that, because that is crazy. It looks really cool, but it's shooting out way too fast, and again, still too many things, too many strands coming out. So I think we'll do a couple things. I'm going to increase the scale of the sphere a little bit to be like 1, 2, 5, maybe 4, yeah, something like that. Then we are going to increase this to like 0.9, so it's only the highest of the high for the colors. And here where we multiply by 10, let's try, I don't know, it was 3 before I think, so let's just try 5, see what happens. So another flipbook. So with the new flipbook, it's looking better. I still think we have too much, so I'm gonna have to change the noise pattern. I think the velocity is working for the most part. We're getting some stepping that I'm not liking, so I might have to increase the sub steps of the pop sim by 1, and that might solve it. I'm also going to increase the speed in which the noise moves, so I'm going to make this like ×2 to give it a little bit more erratic look. And I'm going to, instead of having the frequency be really high, I'm going to make it lower and keep this value Let's see what happens. So I'm going to flipbook yet again. Alright, so here is the new flipbook. However, I went and made a bunch of changes after I paused the video a bit, just so that we didn't have to go over and over as I change each individual setting. I did want to give you guys an idea of the process that it takes to go through creating an effect like this. So it's good to see just sort of the trial and error, but now that I've gone through that a bit, I will just kind of show you the settings that I have. So if I pause this, you can see here that this is lots more strands, individual tiny strands coming out instead of that fountain look that we had before. So if I minimize this, so the things that I did, I'm going to kill this flipbook. I'm going to go in, and so I changed one thing up. I changed in the turbulent noise, I changed it from alligator noise to simplex noise. I have the frequency at 20, and then I have the minimum value of that fit at 0.2. And so doing all that has then given me, if we look at this, you can't even really see much in the way of color. There's blips here and there, but really that's all you need. And I put down a scatter here so that I could visualize. And you can see there's barely any particles to be emitted from those spots, but that's what gives us that strand look that I've been trying to achieve for a little bit. And so then now we have, it'll give us this sort of thing. So with that, we're getting the ground collisions. It might actually hit the guy. I don't know if that's much of a problem. I'd say just in case, I might as well use him as a collision object. So I'll just try to find him. Yeah, we'll do this. He is a little bit too complex of a character to just use all of him. So instead, I think you can see that there's clothes and there's not really, if we go inside, there's no underlying body. And that's fine, but it's going to be hard to create a collision object out of this. We can try though, so I'll just do BDB from polygons and see what it gives us. And it's not terrible, I guess, so let's lower the voxel size. Okay, yeah, I guess that's usable. I don't really need to alter too much about this, and we don't need perfect collisions. Just need it to mostly react if it does happen to hit him. And we'll just have to assume that this little splash that's coming from between the beams isn't actually harmful. That, or we'd have to create a lot of fields to push that away, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it adds to it and would look pretty cool if it did impact him. So what we will do now is we're going to do null out hero collide. We're going to go back in here. We're going to make another static object. Bump that over here, and then we're going to choose our out hero collide, and then we need it to be deforming geometry, and then for collisions where it says volume, right now it's at ray intersect, we're going to change that to volume sample. So now if we don't display that and display this, this gives us our collision object, and we can increase the uniform divisions a bit just to be safe. Actually, no, we can't. I forgot, it is actually using the fidelity of this up here, so we'd have to change it here. That's a bit, yeah, that's, I think, looks good. So, yep, this is now a little bit higher. Looks good. So with all that done, going to cache this out. So I'm going to make a file cache. And we'll just call this collide strands. Why not? And this doesn't start until 10:44. Just make sure this is going to where it needs to be. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to kick this off and take a little bit for me and no time for you. So here we go. Check back in a second. Okay, the the file cache is done, and so now we have to go to load from disk, and if you do that immediately, since I only cached from 10:44 on, you have to go to where it says load from file, where it says missing frame, go to no geometry. And now, if I scrub this, I've got my particles. So now we're going to shade these in the same way that we did with our beams, and we're going to rasterize these and then give them a color using this volume wrangle. So we can just really copy and paste a bunch of stuff. I don't think we need to mess with N-age on this one. We will need the P-scale. This is removing stranded points. We don't need that either, but I'll just copy it for now. Copy these. All right. So again, we don't need this. We'll need the P-scale. Need all that. This is where we rasterize. Right now it looks a little chunky, but that could just be a viewport issue, so should probably be fine. So we're going to do out splash, and then we're going to do object merge. Take this, drag that into there. Don't export a relative path. Go to manual, make a new object. Whoop. Slash. Paste this in here. Go to our matnet. Make a new material. I'm gonna call this one splash. Yeah, just splash. And then here we need to change the color of this, which again we aren't really gonna see here, but that's fine. We're gonna go and make a new mantra. So right now it's just hero beam. I'm gonna copy it. We're gonna split these up later, but for now I just want to mess with the splash, so I'm gonna make splash. So now let's go to our render view. Okay, well, looks interesting. We'll have to see how it plays with everything else. There's some semi-strange motion blur going on here. But that's fine for now. We'll have to see what it looks like in actual motion. But what we need, now that I can see that this is rendering okay, is we're going to have to change the shader a bit, and we're going to change the color of it. I want to see what it looks like with everything now. So let's go back to Hero Beam. We'll add splash. It's going to take a little bit longer to render, but I think it's important to be able to compare this with what's happening with the beams. So, since one is purple and one is gold, we need to find some way to blend these two colors to give us a splash that isn't just gold. Yeah, this is going to need to be altered. So let's start playing around with color. I think what we can do is just combine both colors and see what happens there. So it starts off a hot goldish orange, and then as it cools in the outer edges, it'll turn more magenta. And so first I'm gonna just turn off auto rendering, and so we can do some color picker stuff. I'm gonna take this color picker, we'll do something like that. Get rid of that. Make it so that there's not really the super hot stuff that we're seeing here. Maybe make this darker. And then I want sort of an orange. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. Let's see what that looks like. So we can see here that it's not picking up the full range of colors. So that means we need to go to the material. And then where we have intensity and temperature scale, we're going to have to play with those. So intensity scale, let's go down first. Temperature scale. Sometimes it's good to just crank those values. So 0.1, we'll go the opposite way now. 0.01. So to get rid of all that trial and error and you guys having to watch it, I went through and I did some specific testing just to see what I could get, and I'm just going to give you guys the values that I have so that you don't have to watch me do this over and over and over again. So with here I changed the intensity scale to 0.5, so this makes this glow a bit hotter, and then I have this temperature scale at 0.2, but then where I really changed stuff is back in this ramp. I just kind of pushed everything more to this side, and I think it could still use a little bit of work. So if I start moving this down, this will give us more range of color when I hit render here. Yeah. So now when these blast off, they're going to have a lot more variation of color. And I think that's looking pretty cool.